Welcome to Passioneer Magazine, the podcast, where you'll hear inspirational stories, encouraging news, and in-depth interviews with authors, influencers, CEOs, and thought leaders. Passioneer Magazine, the podcast. Bold ideas, brave pursuits, boundless inspiration. Hello. Thank you so much, Cynthia, for joining us here on Passioneer Magazine, the podcast. I cannot wait to talk to you today.
Thank you for having me. I'm really looking forward to this conversation.
Absolutely. Now, I realize that I may be introducing you to some new listeners, some new viewers out there. So before we get started, first question for you. Tell us a little bit about yourself. What makes you you?
I'm going to keep this nice and simple. So I'm a change maker and a communications expert. And the thing I do is I help people communicate with confidence, whether it's through my speaking, my corporate training, my coaching, or my consulting. But I want people to communicate with confidence.
Absolutely. And I love that. Now, you describe yourself as a change maker, one who moves people from overwhelmed to clear and activated. I love that. What is the usual setting underneath that overwhelm for the leaders that you have been able to coach and consult?
A lot of times people just have so much weight on them. There's so many responsibilities, and it's helping them kind of get the clarity. And what I find is there's often a common thread, but when we're the ones holding the weight and we're balancing all these things, we can't see it. And we need somebody to come in and help us. So sometimes it's one-on-one coaching. Other times I just had a call this morning about an organization that their leadership team is struggling with some things. And I'm going to be delivering a workshop to help them get clear on their personalities and the personalities of their team, because a lot of times it's because I show up how I want people to be. I want you to know this. And we don't pause and think of the other person and how do we meet them where they're at? It's a dance. It's not a pull. And that is often a common thread I see.
Yeah. I find that for so many people, it's having that moment of nuance of figuring out what is the personality type of the leader, what is the personality types of the team, of the audience, and how do you do this dance, right? Of the leader being authentically themselves. They were invited. That's why they have their business, right? That's why they do what they do, because they have an authentic voice. But then at the same time, understanding how can we make sure that everyone is heard, that everyone is seen. And I love that you help people with the communication aspect of it, because it's the same for our relationships, right? The wife is the way that the wife is. The husband is the way that the husband is. And so many times we see folks and go, there's no way I could be married to that person. And the answer is, but you're not. It's not your dance, right? That's what God has called for them to do. So you're in a different relationship because that's what you've been called to do. And I love that you help people communicate. This is who we are. This is what we do. And how can we say this so that more ears can hear it, feel it, understand it, and take advantage of what we have to offer. That is so important. I hope that you guys are picking up that nugget that she is putting down there. Now, your advocacy journey began with a deeply personal season of your life. How did your lived experience reshape the way that you have approached your professional communication, your professional leadership? What lesson did you learn there?
Oh, for the listeners, I have a child, an autistic child with some complex medical needs. And for those listeners who have lived this journey, it's a hard one. But what I learned is I have all this public relations, communications experience. And then I'm on this journey. How do I weave them together? And for me, the common thing is kindness. If I bully my way and if I shout and I scream and I demand, it might feel okay in the moment, but I'm burning every bridge. I live in a small community. They all know each other. And so what I realized is I have to have grace. I have to show up and recognize this is a human being and my child has needs, yes, but I have to find a way. And so I learned quickly to draw upon my communications, what we were just talking about. Who is this person? How do they relate? What's their personality? And not just take this angry mama bear perspective, which some days I want to have, but it isn't going to help in the long term because my child is still going to have needs a week from now. And so it's that grace, it's that kindness, it's relationship, and it's looking at the long term versus this moment that I'm frustrated or upset right now. And that's where I find with advocacy, there's a difference between bullying and advocacy. And bullying might get you what you want as you stamp your foot in that moment, but it's not going to help for those of us who are on a longer journey.
Yeah, yeah, I have to agree with you 100%. My mom is a nurse, and one of the things that I have found is that those that are called to the medical field, they have a certain personality type. They are a certain type of person, and I find that boy, do they operate from grace. Like you said, many times they have that mama bear, that papa bear person that is in the moment, perhaps a little more aggressive than they would like to be, right? Because they're at a vulnerable moment. And
Mhm.
what I have found is that most in the medical field, they extend the grace without even your asking for it. They know that you're having a moment, right? Like you just found out something
Mhm.
and you're not pleased with that information. And because we are all human beings, sometimes we react a little bit bigger, a little bit bolder, a little bit brasser than perhaps we wanted to. And I have found that it's almost like nurses, I like to call it, since have faith leadership as my background, that they tend to lead with that deacon's heart, right? They extend that grace so lovely, so wonderfully. And there is nothing like them. So yes, kudos to our medical teams out there that are helping us through those difficult moments. Now, you began your career as a reporter, as an editor. How does thinking like a journalist influence the way that you consult with leaders, the way that you teach others to be their authentic self?
Oh, I love that question. So, being a reporter and journalist is listening. There's a lot of listening. There's a lot of curiosity. I couldn't go into an interview knowing the answers or having a strong opinion. My job was to gather information, to sit back, to listen, to ask questions, tell me more. Help me understand how you got to that. The curiosity, and curiosity does not come naturally because our natural is I going in, I know the answers, I'm in this role. Curiosity, you have to actively put on a curiosity mindset and say, I may have my piece, but I want to go in and truly listen to learn, listen to understand, not listen to find my opportunity to talk. And then the other piece of being a journalist and reporter is it's all storytelling. And how do I create a story? How do I connect with people through storytelling? I do a lot of work with leaders on storytelling. I just did a workshop with some CFOs that are financial people who go into the data. And I'm like, how do you use stories so people understand how they connect? And so it's a mix of curiosity, asking questions, and then storytelling.
Mhm. I am a naturally curious person. I always have been. And I remember one day my mother having to explain to my teachers on the first day that it's like Angela is naturally inquisitive. She is going to ask you 1,000 questions. Just know that. Like, she's not trying to be disruptive. She wants to know. Well, why is it blue? Well, why isn't it green? Why is it 11 o'clock and not noon? Does it matter if it was 11:15? And it's like so many people take that as questioning their authority as opposed to someone having a curious mind. I love that you are helping people to understand that there's nothing wrong with the curiosity. That's how we learn, right? We have to ask the questions. We have to let people know where we are along the dance. And there is nothing like taking someone by the hand and helping them. And to me, when you give your answer, that's what you're saying. I want you to ask the questions. If you're not naturally inquisitive, if you're not naturally curious, I want to show you how to, tap into that side and help you explore even more. Um, as as someone who not only coaches, but as a therapist, we find that so many times one person is one way and the other person is a different way, and we assume that the other person is the way that we are. So I love that you are showing leaders not only something that's really good for their business, but something
Mhm.
that's good for their relationship, right? Because I love that. I love that. I really hope that everyone, you are giving us such nuggets today. I really hope that people are definitely picking them up. Now, in a world that is saturated with messaging, we are being bombarded, right? Because let's admit it, we're all on our phones, probably a little bit too much sometimes. But what separates communication that informs from communication that really moves people to action, that really moves them into the place where they should be?
It starts with knowing who is it you're talking to, like, and seeing that as a person. So we would never in marketing say we're marketing to women ages 20 to 50 because that is not a human being, right? So you really want to get clear and going back to what does that person care about? What are their needs? What are their interests? And how do you communicate in a way that meets their needs? So I do a whole thing on storytelling, how throughout history we use storytelling, indigenous cultures, oral, singing, writing, visual, and we're losing that as a culture. We're dumping information, and people's brains retain more information through storytelling. So they don't have to be a Hollywood movie. I mean, I love the Humans of New York on Facebook. Really good storytelling that's concise. And just you really want to think of less about this is what we want people to know and more about what do people care about and how do what I'm talking about relate to people, and look at how you do storytelling. Again, is it visual storytelling? Is it oral? I mean, this is how we've evolved as human beings, is storytelling. And storytelling doesn't come naturally. And we criticize people when their people skills, I call that's what some people call soft skills. I call them people skills. the accountant, the lawyer, the engineer that went to school for this, and this is where their specialty gets criticized when they're not able to communicate clearly, but no one's ever helped them learn the skills, help them refine how they show up, their messaging. And so we need to first look at what skills do people naturally possess and what skills do they need help with?
Yeah, yeah. I am finding that so many cultures of color, um, storytelling is a part of the culture. It's woven in, right? Griots in the African culture, something that has continued across the diaspora. But we're finding that, as like you said, that over the years, that piece of the culture seems like it became less relevant as we started to evolve in our various societies. And now here we are, and now we're looking back saying, hey, wait a minute, we don't forget that. And I'm so glad that you are calling that to the fore because we need to remember all of the good pieces, the bad stuff too, because we can learn from the bad stuff too. And I'm not talking about necessarily what was done to a particular group of people. We're talking about leadership. So we also need to know what are the bad things that happen as far as we tried this project and it did not work and we're not going to do that again, right? But at the same time, these are the things that have worked for us, and let's make sure that we don't try to keep reinventing the wheel, but let's learn from everything. Storytelling, what an important aspect of that. Do you find that when you're talking about storytelling, that more leaders, more organizations and associations are trying to incorporate that into their team building experiences?
Absolutely. It's funny. I do a workshop on how to use storytelling to make a personal connection. And I just, like I said, I just did it with a group of CFOs from multi-million dollar companies. I've done it with nonprofits, governments, leadership teams, because, and like we talked about earlier, it helps you in your personal life. It helps you as a volunteer, a parent, a spouse, a friend, and you're already using storytelling when you go to coffee with a friend. Oh my goodness, you wouldn't believe what just happened. And then we go into the office and we don't. And we wonder why we're not connecting with people, but you're doing it at the dinner table. You're doing it. And so what I do is help leaders and teams create stories in a meaningful way, and so it's not winging it, it's not how to do off the cuff, it's helping them break down the elements of a good story and helping them have the tools to think in advance of that story so they can weave it in. And it really, I can tell you, it makes a huge, huge difference. And I do workshops and I think of the audience before I go in. I think of their needs and I use stories that relate to them. I'm not going to use a story from over here. And I am very strategic with my stories. So that's a piece that needs practice, but the rewards are huge.
Hmm. And it made me think of, I remember, so on my speaker page, if it's want Dr. Angela to be, your speaker, click here, right? And we all have a version of that. And then there's this form that you fill out. And I have a few questions that are tell me about your audience, right? Like, who are they? What do they need? What are they looking for? What are some things they already know? What are some things they don't know? How are you utilizing me to
Mhm.
help fill in with that gap, right? And on a particular social media platform, someone was asking the question and she was filling out one of these forms and was saying, this person is asking all of these questions and I just don't understand. And it was so interesting to have to read some of the responses of people saying, listen, if you've never done this before, just say you've never done this before, and not to to poke fun at that person, but I don't think that they understood why that was so important. And like you said, who is the audience? Because if you are talking to C-suite folks, you don't have to explain the basics. They already know that part. So I love that you are, reiterating that for someone who perhaps is just starting out. That is an important thing to address. I love that. Now, you've mentioned that you've worked across government, corporate, nonprofit, emergency response environments. What has that diversity and that context there help you to understand about clarity under pressure? What have you learned and what are you able to share with those various audiences out there?
I think there's some just core human elements that exist no matter what the situation. And it's less is more. How can we, in public relations communications, we talk about your three key messages. You either have one, two, or three things you're trying to convey. The human brain cannot understand past three. And if you're not clear on what the focus is, the person's not going to be clear. And then you have this miscommunications. So what I do, whether it's, I've worked a plane crash where it's sticking out of the building and I'm doing 200 media interviews in a week across North America, or I'm, helping during COVID, I supported so many organizations. It all comes down to simple. Less is more. Is there one thing that you're really needing people and what can wait? Let's not dump the whole thing on people now. If it's change management, that we're going to do this and we're going to do this. And remember, executive functioning is impaired under stress. Recognizing 1 in 9 people have ADHD, recognizing 1 in 5 people are dyslexic. Doesn't mean they can't read. Recognizing, at least in Canada, the average reading level is grade 3. It does not mean literacy. It means we're on our phones, we're watching YouTube shorts. So how do we take complex information and simplify it into bite-sized pieces that maybe we tell the story over time versus I just want to get this out because I want to be done. So I'm just going to dump all the stuff on you. Your eyes are going to glaze over. You're going to disconnect, but I've checked off that I've told you versus helping people through the journey.
Mm-hmm. Boy, I had to giggle there because you are so right. We love it, and social media is the prime example. There's a particular platform that I think the majority of the world is on. I won't necessarily say its name, but you spend a lot of time there. And we have found that so many people, when they break it up and it's part one, part two, part three, right? That people love it. And one of the comments will always be, I'm commenting so I'll come back for part two. Like, keep me posted. And people love that. And you're right, we do need to make sure that we figure out what is the proper number. Some people take too long. And then you read the comments and like, okay, this took 3 to 5 business days for you to explain. This could have been 2 parts instead of 12 parts. So you are so right. That communication, that sweet spot, and finding it is so important. I love that. Now, speaking of the all that you do as a crisis communication lead during the Vancouver Olympics, congratulations on that. You operated in high stakes situations. What does effective leadership communication look like when we are talking about high stakes, when it is high value? A lot of people are there now. They're not at the beginning, they're there. What does that mean?
Honestly, my success with every high stake has been relationships, 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 relationships. Knowing how that person is. So I'm going to make, if I'm an extrovert feeler and I ask a question to an introvert thinker and they don't answer right away, I'm going to dismiss them and say they don't know. But if I have a relationship with them, I understand they're an introvert thinker and need time to process. And I'm going to meet them where they are. And even if you're just meeting somebody for the first time in this high stakes, you can still ask questions. You can still hit pause for 1 minute and say, "Hi, I'm Cynthia. What do you need? How can we communicate effectively?" And people don't do that. They let the stress, instead of taking that moment, hitting pause, asking questions of the other person, assessing the situation. And honestly, before the Olympics happened, I drank so much coffee. I went and met people. I had coffee. I went for lunch. I learned who their kids were. I tried to understand them. And it was funny. I did all this drinking coffee and I was only 3 months on the job. And this is before the Olympics leading up, and a plane hit a high-rise building during rush hour on a Friday. And we had to evacuate all this area. We had fuselage, but when I got to the scene and I was the public information officer coordinating everything, I'd already drank coffee with some of the players that were there. So they knew me. They didn't know me well, but we had some of that trust. We had some of that relationship, and it was a very smooth. It was hectic, but there were no bumps in the road because I was able to people I didn't know ask the questions, but I also had some of those relationships that I needed to draw on were already established. So you can train, you can learn, you can take a course, you can do all this, but you got to get some of those relationships if you can in advance. And at the scene, if things are hitting the fan, ask questions about the person.
Oh, that is such a nugget of wisdom there. I think we are starting to forget how to be patient with each other as well. If you think about prior to social media, we would sit down more face to face or on the phone. And even on the phone, when you couldn't see someone's face, you could tell the difference between the pause of a stall, the pause of thinking, and the pause of just not knowing, right? And all of that, surprisingly, sounds different, even on the phone. And I know people are going, "What?" But the person isn't saying anything, but it feels different. It sounds different. The breath sounds different. And I think that as we are able to communicate with everyone around the world on our phones, we're starting to lose a little of that nuance. And I love that you are teaching people, don't lose that. We still need to pay attention to each other. We need to look each other, in the eye and want to know about that person. Hi, like you said, "Hi, I'm Cynthia." And it's like, "Hi, I'm Dr. Angela. It's so good to meet you." And it's like, just have that moment of just being kind with each other, of being more loving in how you are, but at the same time, be a really great leader. Right? So I love that you are doing that. And my last question for you is this. After more than 25 years in communication, what do you believe is the most overlooked skill that will define influential leadership in the next decade?
I would say listening and curiosity, because again, we feel that I'm in this position of leadership. I have to have all the answers. I have to know the journey. I have to problem solve. But you know what? A true leader looks for people who have their shadow. So for me, there are areas that I am not so great in. All of us, we have areas where we excel, and we have areas that are a bit of a shadow for us. How do we surround ourselves with people who don't think like us, don't act like us, don't talk like us, and and accept that we need that, and then ask questions. And when you're asking questions and curiosity, you have to put your own thoughts, beliefs on the shelf. Otherwise, you're listening through that lens. And then you're only in the side that you know. So, how do I ask those questions and go, I am open to hearing something that is different from what I believe? And by doing that, you're going to actually, as a leader, empower your team, and they're going to speak more because they know you're actually listening to them, which is huge. Why have this team if you're not listening? Plus, you're going to see more of, you might not see the whole picture, but you're going to see way more of the picture than if you only go with your view. So I think that is the skill that AI cannot do for us. We cannot AI our way through this, and we can't just rest on our laurels. So if we truly want to excel, we need to improve our people skills and our listening skills.
I could not. I could not agree with you more. My team building workshops is one of the most sought after because, like you said, people are going, I don't, I'm missing a piece of the puzzle here, or it seems like I keep hitting a ceiling. I can't seem to figure this out. And like you said, a really great leader knows what they don't know, and they hire professionals who do. That's why you have a team. So, because everyone specializes in a something, everyone does something really, really well. And if you want to be stubborn and keep doing it your way, just so that you can say, I'm the boss, do that. That's fine. But a really good leader surrounds themselves with really great co-leaders. I love that you are continuing to spread that message. I tell you, thank you so much for coming on and spending time with me here today. Cynthia, before I let you go though, for those that are listening, if they want to reach out to you, if they want to know more about your services, and they want to follow you on socials, what's the best way to do that?
For anybody on LinkedIn, it's Cynthia Lockrey. Check me out, send me a message. That's how we connected. And otherwise, you can go to my website, lockreycommunications.com. And by the way, everybody, I've got tons of free resources that you can just download. And then you'll have some tools to help you. I have a whole worksheet on storytelling that's free. Just go download it.
See, an example there of great leadership. Thank you again, Cynthia, for being a guest here on Passioneer Magazine, the podcast.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for listening to Passioneer Magazine, the podcast.